This podcast was produced using artificial intelligence and refined by human editors.
Here we are, coasting on the Mediterranean breeze, straight into the heart of Catalonia. Welcome to Travel with Lara and Luca. I'm your friend Luca.
And I am Lara. Today's journey takes us to the vibrant city of Barcelona, where the streets are paved with history and the scent of the sea.
And let's not forget the tapas, which we'll be sinking our teeth into quite literally later on.
Oh, the tapas. But first, today's episode is brimming with the iconic sights of Barcelona, where every corner tells a story and every facade is a work of art.
Remember the first time we gazed up at the Sagrada Familia? The towers spiraling like a confectionery dream, cranes and all. It's been ongoing for what, over 130 years now?
It's the never-ending story of architecture. This city is alive with the spirit of Gaudí, isn't it? But of course, we have much more than Gaudí's genius to discuss today.
Indeed, a metropolis of this caliber shines from every angle. We'll wander together through the cobbled lanes of Barri Gothic, amble along the sun-drenched Barceloneta beach.
And for you history buffs, Luca here will lead the charge into stories of centuries past, won't you?
Only if you promise to chime in with your poetic musings, Lara. They seem to have a mysterious power to transport our listeners straight to the scene.
Speaking of poetry, nothing quite captures the essence of Barcelona like Garcia Lorca's words, "The only street in the world which I wish would never end."
La Rambla. Yes, we must speak of La Rambla. Though visitors, beware of the pickpockets. Remember that time you nearly lost your favorite scarf to a sneaky thief?
I do. But for the record, it wasn't the thief's fault. The scarf simply couldn't resist the allure of Barcelona's charismatic rogues.
Ha! And that's just a glimpse of what's in store. We'll guide you through the delicious maze of Barcelona's cuisine. Prepare your taste buds for a sensory overload.
From the savory slices of jamón ibérico to the sweet sipping of cava, culinary explorations here could, and often do, last a lifetime.
But it's not just about the mainstream marvels. We've got a treasure chest of hidden gems up our sleeves. We'll whisper the secrets of Barcelona's alleys, divulge the enigmas wrapped in its urban tapestry.
Can't forget about our day trips beyond the city buzz. The idyllic escapes that surround Barcelona, where the pulse of Catalonia really beats.
That's right, we'll divulge it all. How to travel smarter, not harder, where the locals bask away from the tourist gaze. Those quaint townships nestled in the arms of the rugged hillside.
And just when you thought you knew Barcelona, we have some weird facts that might just make you look at this city in a whole new light.
Don't worry, we promise not to impose the quirky alone. We're not monsters. There'll be plenty of history to make sense of the present, to honor the past, the sieges, the artists, the revolutions.
And what better way to conclude our introduction than by offering a teaser of the travel hacks that have made our trips here nothing short of spectacular.
Stay with us as we unpack the colors, tastes, and tales of a city that never ceases to amaze. We'll make sure you depart full of stories to tell and an urge to book your next flight to Barcelona.
Exactly, and next up, iconic sights. Blick at the Basilica, peer into the parks, and revel at the sights that define this enigmatic city.
Stay tuned as we delve into the must-visit landmarks that are the pulse of Barcelona. Immerse yourselves with us right after this delightful break.
So grab your virtual helmets for our architectural odyssey, because Barcelona waits for no one.
That's right, and don't forget the virtual glasses. The visions we're about to unveil are nothing short of intoxicating. All right, fellow travelers, we're diving into the magical world of Barcelona's iconic sites. And you know, we have to start with the one and only Sagrada Familia.
The site that's never out of sight in the city. Gaudí's masterpiece is like Barcelona's version of a never-ending story.
Seriously, they've been building it since 1882, and it's still not finished. That's what you call commitment to art, or just really slow construction workers.
Oh, come on, Luca, you know it's all about Gaudí's intricate designs. But you've got to love this. Did you know construction could wrap up by 2026, the centennial of Gaudí's death?
I'll believe it when I see it. But honestly, every time I visit, I discover something new. Like those chameleons and turtles holding up the pillars. I bet they're the slowest construction workers of the bunch.
And how about the Nativity facade? It's seriously like playing I Spy with biblical scenes. I always find something new tucked away. Last time, I swear a shepherd winked at me.
Was it divine intervention or just the Barcelona sun getting to you? Now, for our listeners, you can't talk about Sagrada Familia without mentioning the spires, right? They tower over the city, blending Gothic and Art Nouveau like a colossal stone forest.
With every spire representing a different biblical figure. Eventually, there will be 18 of them, and guess what? The tallest one hasn't even been built yet.
It's going to be 100 meters shorter than Montjuic Hill, because Gaudí believed no work of man should surpass God's work. Or he didn't want to block the view. I mean, either way, it's thoughtful.
All right, let's slide over to another Gaudí gem, Park Güell. Luca, didn't you once try to camouflage yourself against those mosaics?
I did, and I might have succeeded if not for my neon trainers. But Lara, don't you think it's like wandering through a Dr. Seuss book? All those curves and colors.
Absolutely, and the view from the main terrace? Can't get enough of it. Park Güell isn't just about the mosaics. It's about spotting landmarks and the shimmering Mediterranean.
True. Remember that time we tried to count the number of sailboats from up there? What a day. Next, let's meander down to the beating heart of the city, Las Ramblas.
Ah, Las Ramblas, a boulevard where life is a theater and everyone's part of the show.
Exactly. Living statues, impromptu dancers, artists sketching your silhouette before you even realized you wanted a portrait.
And don't forget about the markets. Just a detour into La Boqueria, and you're in a different world. It's like Barcelona's stomach, full of colors, flavors, and smells.
Oh, the jamón, the cheese, the uproar over who has the best fruit juice stand. La Boqueria is a feast for the senses.
But let's be honest, navigating Las Ramblas is an art. Keep your bag close, weave through the crowds, and for heaven's sake, steer clear of those overpriced sangria traps.
An art that you, my dear, have mastered. Remember when you found that ancient bookstore tucked away in that side alley? It was like finding treasure.
It felt like stepping back through time with those dusty shelves and that old book smell. You could get lost in there for hours and not even realize it.
So, we've touched some skies, strolled through artistic realms, and walked the vibrant veins of Barcelona. But wait, there's more.
Lots more. Like, did you know there's a whole world waiting for you right beneath your feet in Barcelona?
Oh, yes, the city has layers like a historical cake. But before we dig too deep, we're about to dig into something equally layered and delicious in our next segment. Any guesses, Lara?
One word.
Tapas. Get your forks ready, because in the next segment, we're diving fork first into Barcelona's delicious cuisine.
At the heart of Barcelona lies its culinary delights. Who's ready for a sensory feast through Catalan cuisine, Luca?
My taste buds have been on standby since the intro, Lara. Let's dive straight into the essential tapas experience. I mean, is it even a trip to Barcelona without tapas?
Absolutely not. I remember my first patatas bravas in a tiny bodega off Passeig de Gràcia. The perfect blend of crispy potatoes, spicy sauce, and a cool aioli to top it off.
Oh, those are addictive. But don't get me started on bombas. I still dream about that spicy meat-stuffed potato ball, and bam, that burst of flavor.
Exactly, though I've noticed a lot of places outside of Spain just don't get tapas right. They're either oversized or lack the simplicity of truly authentic ones. Less is more, people.
True, tapas are about quality, not quantity. Like pan con tomate, now that's simplicity. Bread, garlic, tomato, olive oil, and salt.
The beauty lies in the fresh ingredients. Speaking of simplicity, how about the last time we scoured the Barri Gòtic looking for the best anchovies? Remember that tiny bar?
How could I forget? You were determined to prove that good anchovies don't have to taste like salty rubber.
And I succeeded. But let's talk paella, Luca. We've walked miles along Barceloneta looking for the perfect one.
Ah, the great paella quest. I think we gained a sixth sense for detecting just the right combination of saffron and socarat.
You know, I've teased the reveal of our favorite paella spot in the city, but listeners will have to hang on till our travel tips segment for that golden nugget.
They're on the edges of their seats, I'm sure. But let's not forget escalivada, that roasted veggie dish that became part of your vegetarian phase.
Oh, months of culinary bliss. Each bite was a melody of smoky eggplant, red bell pepper, onion, and sometimes tomato.
Vegetarian or not, everyone must try it. Now for a hotly debated topic, dessert. Crema catalana or churros con chocolate, Lara?
Ah, the eternal question. Creamy or crispy? Crema catalana, with its delicate burnt sugar crust, always takes me back to my first culinary love affair in Barcelona.
And yet, a plate of warm churros and a cup of thick, rich chocolate could steal anyone's heart, a messy but passionate embrace of flavor.
Let's call it a draw then. Both deserve their own spotlight in the Dessert Hall of Fame.
Agreed. Now, what's a meal without a glass of something special? Barcelona boasts some luscious local wines.
Oh, a chilled glass of cava on a hot summer day, pure bliss. Let's not forget vermouths on Sundays for a true local experience.
Cheers to vermouth, the perfect accompaniment to any lazy afternoon tapas feast. Who knew an aromatized, fortified wine could evoke lazy strolls down cobbled lanes?
Speaking of drinks, we can't skip the legendary drinking fountains. The tale goes that if you drink from the Font de Canelets, you're destined to return to Barcelona.
Or in our case, stay forever chasing the next delicious meal.
Here's to Barcelona, then, a city that knows its food, its wine, and the way to win hearts through the stomach.
And just when our listeners think they've tasted all that Barcelona's cuisine has to offer, we'll whisk them away to find hidden treasures in the city's culinary scene.
Oh, but that's a treat for another segment. Up next, we'll unearth the hidden gems of Barcelona. Prepare to jot down notes because these are secrets too good to keep.
Hidden alleys, secret courtyards, and waiting behind nondescript doors are the experiences that give Barcelona its unique flavor.
All right, adventurers, we've been over the grandeur of Gaudí and the delights of tapas. But now let's take a slight detour off the beaten path in this segment. Luca, ready to uncover some of Barcelona's hidden gems?
Always ready, Lara. When you think you know Barcelona, the city winks at you and reveals another secret. First stop, the Library of Catalonia. Nestled in the Raval district, not everyone knows about this treasure trove.
Ah, the peaceful cloisters and the smell of old books. It's like stepping into another time. I also love that it's in a former hospital, Hospital de la Santa Creu, which adds to the je ne sais quoi.
Speaking of je ne sais quoi, let's talk about Els Quatre Gats. Picasso used to hang out here. It's surreal, sitting in the same space where he once sipped coffee and sketched.
Yes, but not many tourists know to scour the walls for traces of Picasso's presence. Another spot I adore is the Palau de la Música Catalana, a concert hall which is, in its own right, a symphonic display of mosaic and stained glass.
Oh, a feast for the eyes indeed. Ever been there for a performance?
I have. Listening to choral music, there was almost a religious experience. Luca, do you remember that tiny sculpture garden we found?
The Taller de Picasso, a hidden courtyard filled with strange and whimsical statues. I thought I'd wandered into a Dali painting.
Barcelona does have that effect. It's like these little pockets of creativity are just waiting to be discovered. Another Raval delight for me is the Gaudí-designed Palau Güell, overshadowed by his other works, but it has this cozy Alice in Wonderland feel to it.
Absolutely. It's eccentric, less polished, and intimate, like the eccentric cousin in the Gaudí family of buildings. And if we're talking eccentric, how about the Kiss mural, El Món Neix en Cada Besada?
Oh, 1,000 stories in one kiss, made up of photos submitted by locals, right? Such a beautifully communal piece.
It is. Every time I visit, I find a new face, a new emotion. It's like the city's mood ring. And speaking of emotions, the Jardin del Labyrinth Torta takes you on quite the emotional journey. Ever got lost in there, Lara?
More times than I'd like to admit, Luca. It's this neoclassical garden with a labyrinth at its heart, and each hedge seems to whisper secrets of the past.
It does. It entangles you in its myths and legends.
And helps you burn off those churros calories. Now, what about those who love a good treasure hunt? The Mercat de l'Encant?
Oh, that's shopper's paradise. Antiques, collectibles, and who knows what you might uncover there? Surely that vintage leather-bound diary I found was made for an epic novel.
You and your diaries, Luca. Every page an adventure. For our artistic souls, there is the sculpture park at the University of Barcelona. Not many people stumble upon it, but it's such a serene spot for modern art lovers.
Indeed, it's where you feel the pulse of the city's contemporary art scene without the crowds.
Okay, let's not forget about Casa Vicens. It's Gaudí again, but this time it's his first important building in Barcelona.
That's where you really see his Moorish influences shine. A bit overshadowed by his later works, but just as captivating.
Speaking of getting overshadowed, have you ever had churros in the plaza behind Santa Maria del Pi? In my opinion, they beat any churro on La Rambla.
Secret churro spots are a dime a dozen if you know where to look in Barcelona. And sometimes the best gems are edible.
They really are. But let's not give away all our secrets just yet, Luca. There's the murmuring fountains of Plaça de Sant Felip Neri, tucked away in the Gothic Quarter.
Oh, that place has a haunting beauty, bullet holes from the Civil War and all. It makes you pause and reflect.
Tinged with history, and yet so serene, you'll often find a guitarist there, strumming something soulful.
Exactly. The perfect soundtrack to Barcelona's hidden heart. And if we're wrapping up our spelunk into the lesser known,
we must remember the Bunkers del Carmel for the most underrated view of the city. Pack a picnic and watch the sunset. It's magical.
No better way to end a day of discovery than watching the city light up from that vantage point. But enough about today's treasures, Lara. What's coming up in our next segment?
Up next, we'll be digging into Barcelona's must-see places. Sure, some are famous, but we've got our unique spin on why you simply can't miss them.
Sounds like we'll have a lot more stories to paint a vivid picture for our listeners. Join us after this short breather.
So Luca, we've wandered the whimsical parks, munched through the best tapas, and elbowed our way down Las Ramblas. But what about the places that every traveler just has to pin on their Barcelona map?
Ah, the must-sees, the non-negotiables, the creme de la creme of tourist checklists. First up, how can we not talk about the majestic Montjuïc?
Majestic indeed. The very name means Jewish mountain, which opens a treasure trove of history. And the views. You can see the sprawl of Barcelona like a canvas of art and life.
Exactly. Now you know me, Lara, not exactly what you'd call an athlete.
Haha, the understatement of the century, folks.
Hey, no mocking the vertically challenged. But even I would hike up Montjuïc for that panoramic view, though I think I'll stick with the cable car next time. Less sweat, more scenery.
The cable car is a fantastic suggestion, Luca. It's not just the mode of transport, it's part of the adventure. You ascend over the city, and that's when it hits you just how beautiful Barcelona is.
It's a cityscape and seascape rolled into one. But atop Montjuïc, besides the view, you have a 17th century fortress, the Castel de Montjuïc, brooding over the city like an old watchdog.
Oddly poetic, Luca. And let's not forget the magic fountain. It's like a ballet of water, lights, and music.
My first time seeing that fountain, I might have gotten a teensy bit emotional.
A teensy bit? Folks, he was blubbering like a baby at the spectacle.
I was moved by the artistry. Okay, can we get to another must-see before you incriminate me further?
All right. Let's set our sights on the mysterious Gothic Quarter. The Barri Gothic, now that's a labyrinth worth getting lost in.
With every twist and turn holding centuries of stories, narrow, shadowy lanes that open up into sunlit squares, and the Cathedral of Barcelona.
The Santa Eulalia, yes. And for our listeners, a pro tip, try to find the 13 geese guarding the cloister. It's like a medieval version of Where's Waldo?
Those geese are fierce, guard animals of the holy, and they'll hiss at you if you get too close. Speaking of close, let's inch over to another treasure, the Picasso Museum.
Oh, a hidden gem within the must-sees. It's nestled in a historic palace, and it holds thousands of works by Pablo Picasso himself. Amazing to witness his evolution as an artist.
Did I ever tell you about the time I tried to sketch like Picasso after that visit?
You did, with wine as your artistic inspiration, right?
The less we say about that, the better. Let's move on to something a bit more modern, but equally as iconic, the Akbar Tower.
You mean Barcelona's gherkin?
It does look a bit like a pickled cucumber, doesn't it? But that's just us. Officially, it's inspired by the mountains of Montserrat, a nod to Catalan symbolism.
The tower lights up at night in a spectacle of colors, making it a landmark you can't miss. And speaking of nighttime wonders, we mustn't forget the beaches.
Barceloneta, to be precise. The beach that's always buzzing, lined with seafood restaurants and the best spots to watch the sunset with a mojito in hand.
Looking at the Mediterranean while your feet are buried in warm sand is pure bliss.
You know the feeling when you're there with the city behind you, that you're a part of something ancient and vibrant?
It's powerful. Barcelona's a city that dances on the edge of the sea. The city's maritime heritage really comes to life there.
Speaking of life, Lara, we have to mention La Sagrada Familia again as a must-see. We touched on it before, but come on, it deserves a double mention.
Deserves, demands, requires. Gaudí's masterpiece is a perpetual work in progress that manages to stun even the most jaded of eyes.
It's the heart of Barcelona in many ways. This architectural wonder symbolizes the city's artistic spirit that never settles, always reaching higher, just like its spires.
Beautifully said, Luca. Now, travelers and listeners, as we wrap up our tour of must-see spots in Barcelona, let's not forget about the next segment.
Ah, yes. We want to stir your curiosity before we delve into the peculiar and the overlooked. Can you handle some seriously weird facts about this city?
We'll dip into the oddities and quirks that make Barcelona the enigmatic city it is.
Stay tuned as we explore the unusual, the unexpected, and in some cases, the downright bizarre.
All right, listeners, we're venturing into the weird and wonderful section of our podcast where Luca and I lay out some of the most peculiar facts about Barcelona you probably haven't heard before.
Right you are, Lara. Did you know that Barcelona is home to a museum dedicated entirely to funeral carriages? It's odd, fascinating, and slightly macabre.
Oh, I love that place. It's chillingly beautiful. Also, Barcelona has its own version of the Eiffel Tower story. Gaudí was supposedly approached to design it, but thank goodness he said no. Otherwise, we might have never gotten the Sagrada Familia.
Speaking of Gaudí, here's a fun fact. There are 13 white geese kept in the cloister of the Barcelona Cathedral. They say each goose represents 1 year in the life of Saint Eulalia, the city's co-patron saint, who let's just say had a really tough time as a teenager.
Those geese live a life of luxury compared to poor Eulalia. Now, have you ever noticed how many dragon motifs you can find in the city? It's said that Barcelona has a particular fascination with dragons. You can spot them hiding on buildings, in parks, everywhere.
Ah, dragons! That brings me to the legend of St. George, or Sant Jordi as he's known here, who allegedly slayed a dragon in Barcelona. The blood spilled is said to have sprouted into roses, which is why we give them out on Sant Jordi's Day.
And let's not forget the curious fact that Barcelona could have been the Dutch Amsterdam because the urban planner, Ildefons Cerdà, originally wanted to fill the streets with canals, not roads.
Barcelona's streets are a marvel, though, especially La Diagonal, which, get this, isn't quite diagonal. It's off by just a tad, but that's enough for the locals to point it out.
That's true. Another surprising tidbit, it's illegal to go swimming if the sea is too rough. You can actually be fined for taking a dip during dangerous conditions, which makes perfect sense, but a bit of a buzzkill for the thrill seekers.
Here's one for the books. During the construction of La Sagrada Familia, a numbers enthusiast discovered a magic square on one of its facades. But unlike a typical magic square, the numbers don't add up to the same total.
Yet another Gaudí mystery. Did you know that the local police officers in Barcelona are called Mossos d'Esquadra, and they have one of the oldest police forces in Europe? They've been around since the 18th century.
That's right. They've seen the city through some pretty turbulent times. Now, for a quirky modern fact, Barcelona is the only city in the world awarded a Royal Gold Medal for architecture by the Royal Institute of British Architects. Quite the accolade for a city, don't you think?
Oh, it definitely is. But let's talk about animals again for a second. The city zoo had a highly famous albino gorilla named Snowflake, who was the only known one of its kind. He became a symbolic resident until he passed away.
Snowflake was dearly loved. Okay, Lara, here's a bit of an odd law. It's technically legal to be a nudist in Barcelona. There was a time people were taking full advantage of that, popping into shops and strolling around stark naked.
How could I forget? It made for some interesting shopping trips. And you know what else is interesting? Our dancing. Not us, specifically, but the traditional sardana dance, where everyone joins hands and dances in a circle. It's quite the unifying experience, and you can't help but feel part of the community.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about the kissing tradition on Carrer dels Petons, or the Street of Kisses. It's said that passing through without giving someone a kiss means bad luck in love.
Speaking of love, our football, or soccer for some of our listeners, Barcelona's love for football is so intense that when the team wins, fans flock to the Canaletes fountain. It's tradition to say, if you drink water from the Canaletes fountain, you'll always come back to Barcelona.
That's a fact I can get behind. And here's a mind-boggler for you. The Barcelona people once built human towers up to 10 stories high. These castells are incredibly intricate and require serious strength, balance, and a collective spirit. They're still made today, albeit a tad shorter for safety.
Oh yes, I've seen those. They're nothing short of remarkable. Okay, ready for one last weird fact before we move on? The clocks on the facade of Casa Milà, also known as La Pedrera, are all set to a time that has no significance whatsoever. It's Gaudí's way of saying time is relative, perhaps.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a wrap on the most wonderfully bizarre aspects of Barcelona. We'll walk you through the rich tapestry of Barcelona's history next, so stay tuned for tales that reach as far back as the Roman times.
Absolutely, Luca. Get ready to travel back in time with us to the days of gladiators and Gothic kings. And here we are, Luca, in the heart of Barcelona's past. You feel the weight of centuries on these storied streets.
Absolutely, Lara. History in Barcelona isn't just in books. It paints every alleyway, every stone. Now, where should we begin our historical wander?
Let's start where Barcelona itself began, the Roman city of Barcino. Did you know the ancient Roman walls still exist in parts of the Gothic Quarter?
Oh, I love those. And Barcino wasn't exactly a metropolis, right? It was more of a pint-sized Roman outpost.
Exactly. Yet from such humble beginnings, Barcelona grew to become a medieval powerhouse, especially during the reign of the Crown of Aragon.
Ah, the medieval period. That's when Barcelona's Gothic Quarter really took shape, with soaring churches like Santa Maria del Mar.
You've hit the nail on the head, Luca, and we must mention the Jewish quarter, El Call, where narrow streets whisper tales from the past.
Speaking of whispers, you've heard about the Santa Eulalia's ghost in the cathedral cloister, haven't you?
Yes, Barcelona does have an eerie side, but that's a story for our Weird Facts segment. Right now, let's focus on the grandeur of history.
Fair enough. After the medieval era comes the Reapers' War. Catalans fought fiercely against the Spanish monarchy in the 17th century.
And that struggle for autonomy didn't end there. Fast forward to the War of the Spanish Succession, and Barcelona sides with the losing team again.
Yep, marking the fall to the Bourbon kings and the subsequent suppressions of Catalan institutions. Quite a turbulent time for Barcelona.
Indeed. But let's sail into the 19th century, when the Industrial Revolution turned Barcelona into Catalonia's economic powerhouse, changing the city's fabric once more.
And that fabric got a splash of modernism, thanks to visionaries like Gaudí and Lluís Domènech Montaner.
True, the word unique doesn't even start to cover Gaudí's work. Casa Batlló, Casa Milà, his touch is everywhere.
But Gaudí's works were just one part of the transformation. The Eixample district, designed by Ildefons Cerdà, expanded the city beyond its medieval confines.
That's right, the grid-like pattern, the broad avenues, it was revolutionary urban planning.
Now we skip over to the darker chapters. The Spanish Civil War hit Barcelona hard in the 1930s.
Very hard. Barcelona suffered bombardment and ultimately fell to Franco's forces. The dictatorship that followed, let's just say it was a bleak time for Catalan culture and autonomy.
Absolutely, but Barcelona is resilient. It bounced back and set the stage for progress and openness we see today.
Exactly. Let's not forget the pivotal moment in 1992, the Olympic Games, which truly put modern Barcelona on the world map.
Oh, the Olympics. That marked a renaissance of infrastructure, of pride, of global recognition. They really showcased Barcelona to the world.
Yes, they did. And here we are, a city with layers of Roman, medieval, Gothic, modernist, and contemporary elements, all coexisting beautifully.
Perfectly put, Lara. This was just a flight over the timeline of Barcelona's rich history, a testament to diversity and resilience. So what's up next for our listeners?
Next, we'll be sharing expert travel tips to make your Barcelona adventure as smooth as Gaudí's curves. Stay with us. Welcome back, Globetrotters, to that segment you've all been waiting for, where Luca and I distill our collective wisdom into the most practical, expert travel tips for navigating Barcelona.
Ah yes, it's the nitty-gritty, the savvy traveler's guide to the city, the how to not look like a tourist instruction manual, or at least how to look like a well-informed one.
So where do we begin, Luca? Where should our trusty travelers start when they touch down in Barcelona?
First things first, Lara. The Barcelona card. It's like the golden ticket of travel in the city. Free public transport, discounts at museums, some free entries. It's a no-brainer.
Indeed. And speaking of public transport, don't fear the metro system. It's a web of wonders connecting almost all corners of the city, and it's surprisingly easy to navigate.
More of a fan of the open air myself. I always say, rent a bike. Barcelona is pretty bike-friendly, with separate bike lanes and plenty of places to lock up.
Great for the calves, but remember your helmet, safety first. Now on to one thing that's plagued many a Barcelona visit, the pickpocket peril.
Ah, the infamous pickpocket. My tip, wear a money belt. Not the most fashionable, but it'll save you from that unnerving, where's my wallet, pat-down dance.
Combine that with a healthy dose of common sense. Don't flash your cash, keep an eye on your belongings, and maybe don't take a map out in the middle of Las Ramblas.
If you do need to check where you are, be slick about it. Better yet, use your phone. Apps like Google Maps can be a lifeline.
Which brings us to the lifeline of modern life, the internet. Get a local SIM card with data, they're reasonably priced, and will save you from racking up those dreaded roaming charges.
Absolutely. However, try to disconnect every now and then, embrace the moment, because next thing you know, you're living through your screen instead of your eyes.
Wise words, poet Luca. Now, moving on to something we all do, eating. Remember, folks, in Spain, things happen later. Dinner before 9 p.m., you'll be dining with other tourists.
Dining like a king, however, doesn't need a royal budget. My golden tip, search for Menú del Día. It's a set lunch menu, usually with a couple of courses, a drink, and maybe even a dessert or coffee.
Trying to figure out where the locals eat? Look for crowded places, or should I say avoid the empty ones. There's usually a reason they're barren.
Now, Lara, not to rain on anyone's parade, but speaking of weather, pack an umbrella. Barcelona can have sudden showers, and you don't want to get soaked when you're far from your accommodations.
Good tip, Luca. The city is known for its Mediterranean climate, but when it rains, it can really pour. Always check the forecast before heading out.
And what about clothes, Lara? I suppose we should remind our friends that churches and certain historical sites have dress codes. No shorts or sleeveless tops if you want to enter places of worship.
That's true, which makes it the perfect segue into respecting local culture. It's a vibrant city, and while we all love a good party, it's important to keep noise levels down, especially at night.
True. And if you ever end up in a cerveceria asking for a beer, try the local way. A caña is a small beer, perfect for tasting different varieties without overdoing it.
Lovely. And a quick word on language. While most people in the tourism industry speak English, learning a few phrases in Spanish or even Catalan shows respect and can earn you a smile or better service.
Absolutely. Por favor, gracias, and disculpe go a long way. Now, let's not forget about staying connected. Wi-Fi is widely available, but always ask for permission before you jump on someone's network.
Gracious connectivity, that's the way. Speaking of which, shall we connect them to some ideas for when Barcelona's urban charms are all explored?
I thought you'd never ask. Sea and mountains are both just a stone's throw away, but we'll unravel those threads in our next segment on side excursions.
I can't wait, Luca. There's nothing like a little adventure just beyond the city limits to truly complete the Barcelona experience.
Absolutely, and who better to guide you through those excursions than your trusty experts? But that, my friends, is a teaser for what comes next.
Until then, keep these tips handy as you embark on your travels. Remember, Barcelona is waiting for you with open arms and a patatas bravas or two.
And maybe a glass of cava to top it off. Stay adventurous, stay savvy, and join us next as we venture beyond Barcelona for a little side trip excitement.
Still with us, travelers? This time we're steering slightly away from the heart of the city as we explore the best side excursions from Barcelona. So, buckle up.
Quite literally, you might actually want to rent a car for some of these gems. But first up, we're heading to the mountaintop monastery of Montserrat.
Ah, Montserrat, the serrated mountain. The view from up there is just... How do you even describe it, Luca?
It's like if the clouds decided to throw a party on Earth and only invited the most scenic views. And the monastery has this certain serenity, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And you can't miss seeing the Black Madonna, such a venerated statue. The history there is palpable. Monks still live there.
Then there's the boys' choir. Heavenly voices might be an understatement. Seeing a performance is a must-do. What was that one piece they sang when we were there?
Ah, the Viruli. It gives me chills just thinking about it. They sing it almost daily, stunning every time.
From mountains to something completely different now, let's talk about Sitges.
Talk about a contrast, right? From the divine to the decadent, I might say.
Perfect word for it. Sitges has this incredible carnival if you time your visit right, and it's a haven for nightlife and festivals. Oh, and the beaches, of course.
Oh, definitely. Imagine Barcelona's beach vibe amplified in a smaller, more intense package. That's Sitges.
And for those interested in film festivals, Sitges isn't shy. Their film festival is legendary, especially if you're a horror or fantasy enthusiast.
But let's say you want something a bit quieter, perhaps more quaint. Then Catecase is calling your name.
Salvador Dali's summer home. The white houses, the cobblestone streets, the light there. It's no wonder artists have flocked there.
It's like stepping into a painting and just deciding to live there. The sea's different blues are mesmerizing.
Now, Lara, what if I told you we could go back in time? Can you guess where I'm taking our travelers next?
Are you hinting at Girona? Because if you are, then yes, please. That city feels like it hasn't changed in centuries. Hollywood certainly noticed.
Oh, indeed. For those out of the loop, Girona doubled as King's Landing in Game of Thrones. That should give you a taste of what to expect.
It's not just a pretty face, though. There's serious history there. The ancient Jewish quarter, the Arab baths, the cathedral. Every corner has a story.
Speaking of stories, remember that time we got lost in those narrow streets and accidentally stumbled upon the best patisserie ever?
How could I forget? That was an epic caloric mistake. Honestly, worth every crumb.
All right, pulling back from our foodie detour, let's chat about another side excursion. This time a starkly beautiful landscape, the Dali Theater Museum in Figueres.
Only Dali could imagine and bring to life a museum so out of this world. Don't you think it's kind of like walking through his mind?
That's the perfect description, Lara. And it's not just paintings. There are sculptures, installations, collages. It's a journey through surrealism.
And for the cherry on top, his final resting place is there too. A bit macabre, but also fitting for such an extraordinary artist.
If you're wanting to stir your soul a bit more, there's the medieval town of Besalú. The bridge alone is a reason to visit.
Oh, that bridge. I could spend hours taking photos of it from every angle. Besalú feels like a town that time forgot, in the best possible way.
Time forgot, and we discovered. And discover you will if you wander its streets. The Jewish baths, the synagogue, that town is a hidden jewel.
Each of these places we've mentioned has its own character, its own pulse.
That's the beauty of Barcelona. It's a hub that connects you to so many diverse experiences.
And no matter how far you venture, you always carry a piece of Barcelona with you when you return from these side excursions.
And speaking of returning, it's about time we swing back to the heart of the city for our final thoughts. I can't believe we're almost done.
But not quite yet. We still have our conclusion coming up, where we'll tie up all our travel threads into one neat package.
And maybe even share one last secret about this Catalan jewel. You'll have to stick around to find out.
That you will. So join us after this short break for the wrap-up of our fabulous journey through Barcelona.
So here we are, at the end of our Barcelona journey. Can you believe it?
It's like the last bite of a perfect tapa, Luca. You're sad to see it go, but oh, what a ride. Traveling through Barcelona with you and our listeners has been nothing short of amazing.
Oh, absolutely, Lara. Every time we talk about Barcelona, I fall in love with the city all over again. from the whimsical architecture of Gaudí to the bustling streets like Las Ramblas.
True. And don't forget the tapas we pretended to share over the airwaves, the patatas bravas, the gambas al ajillo.
Speaking of which, I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. But before we start planning our next meal, I think it's time we wrap this up with our final thoughts, eh?
Definitely, Luca. Listeners, you came with us as we chatted about our favorite iconic sites, reminisced on delicious meals, and laughed about some of the city's quirks.
We ventured into those hidden gems, sometimes literally. I'm still brushing the dust off from that one alley.
And we unearthed some of Barcelona's history, offering up a different side of the city than you might find on a postcard.
Absolutely. Our aim with Travel with Lara and Luca is always to go beyond the guidebook. We want to be those friends who pull you down a narrow side street because they swear there's something incredible at the end.
And we hope that through our tales and tips, we've inspired you to look at Barcelona, or any journey really, as a series of stories waiting to be discovered.
Not just the stories that have been written down in history books or travel blogs,
but the ones you write yourself, by being there, by engaging with locals, trying the food, and sometimes getting a little lost.
I'm a pro at that part and can testify. Getting lost often leads you to the best stories.
So, as we sign off, we encourage you to think about travel not just as a getaway,
but as a way to get into the heart of wherever you are, to absorb, to learn, and to grow.
And whether it's with us on our podcast or in your own adventures,
remember to always travel with curiosity, an open heart, and a good sense of humor.
Barcelona, with all its charm and character, has been our focus today. But imagine all the stories out there in the world.
Just waiting for you, for us, and we can't wait to be part of that journey with you, wherever it may lead.
So until next time, keep wanderlust in your heart and a map, even if Luca's going to lose it, in your pocket.
And here's our little tease for the next big adventure on Travel with Lara and Luca.
Pack your swimsuit and your ski goggles, because we're tackling a destination that has both sun-kissed beaches and snow-capped mountains. Any guesses?
I'm not giving anything away, but let's just say it's a place where nature and adventure collide spectacularly.
You'll have to join us next time to find out. Until then, this has been Travel with Lara and Luca.
Safe travels, everyone, and see you on the next journey.